In the life of many actors, there are films after which their careers either take a steep upward turn, or on the contrary go downhill. Today we would like to recall such an episode in the life of the famous Belgian. It is of course, about the movie Street Fighter. The participation in the shooting dealt a blow to the career of Jean-Claude Van Damme, from which he has been unable to recover. It is believed that he needed to agree to the second option, because of the simultaneous offers he received to star in screen versions of Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. Let's try to get to the bottom of this. It is well known that the main criterion for choosing Van Damme in favor of Street Fighter was money. The Belgian was paid more in a movie with a budget of $35 million. However, there is a nuance that one tends to forget about kicking Van Damme for being short-sighted. Namely, in 1993, when he received offers, Street Fighter was much more popular than Mortal Kombat. Most likely, this fact also played a role. Street Fighter Part 2 sold 14 million copies. Van Damme himself was not too worried about his choice, because the films with him in the leading role collected more and more money. Stardom Belgian only progressed. The director of Street Fighter, Steven de Souza, would later reveal that Van Damme was constantly disrupting filming, using various substances and leaving the set whenever he wanted. The director and screenwriter had to change the script several times to do without the Belgian on the set. The actor does not deny such allegations. Van Damme's popularity brought his participation in the film Bloodsport, for which he received only $25,000. The film had a modest budget, even by genre standards, and the studios did not count on it. All this led to the fact that when the studios brought the footage, they abandoned it on the shelf, intending to later release Bloodsport directly on the video. This circumstance didn't suit only Van Damme, who locked himself in the editing room for several weeks, where he completely reworked the existing film. When he provided the producers with a new version of Bloodsport a month later, the producers saw a very different movie, and the picture was immediately sent to theaters. Bloodsport grossed $12 million at the United States box office alone on a budget of $1.5 million. Immediately after the film's release, Van Damme woke up famous. Impressed by the Belgian's talents, the producers of Canon Group offered him 3 movies to choose from: The Delta Force 2, American Ninja 3 and Cyborg. Van Damme chose Cyborg and had a similar situation to Bloodsport. The budget for the film was $2 million. The film again did not satisfy the bosses, and Van Damme started again in the editing room. The new version made by a Belgian turned out to be better, and Cyborg was sent to the cinemas. The box office grossed over $10 million. These results did not save the studio from bankruptcy, but Van Damme's career began to gain momentum. In 1994, Van Damme had another hit. Time copped the best box office performance of the Belgian's career. And it was during this period that Street Fighter happened. Capcom Studios produced the computer game and co-financed the film. Street Fighter was furious with the actor's antics because she paid Van Damme's $8 million fee. Mortal Kombat's entire budget was only $20 million. That is, to offer Van Damme a comparable fee New Line Cinema Studio could not. But nothing to do with the Belgian star, who added an affair with Kylie Minogue to all his other antics on the set. Whereas Van Damme would show up on the set with a bottle of whiskey in his hand and an exorbitant ego that everyone hated, Kylie was constantly buying the whole crew drinks and burgers, which made her adored. Naturally, Van Damme's behavior quickly became known to every producer in Hollywood, and there were very few people who wanted to work with him after Street Fighter. They stopped writing scripts for him and calling him into films that could count on something, too, following Street Fighter, which didn't live up to expectations, but still wasn't considered a failure. Van Damme went on to star in very second-rate action films. He even tried to shoot some of the subsequent pictures, as he understood where his career was going. There was a chance to save Van Damme's career. The most realistic chance was the movie Double Team. Originally, the picture was supposed to be a very different kind of movie from the one we all know. Don Jacoby's original script was about an island off the coast of Greece that was used as a safe house for CIA agents. One of the agents would escape from protective custody to get to his nemesis, whom the agency was covering for in every way possible. In the final film, only a small episode remains from the original script. Van Damme claims to have signed up for this particular script because it was a gritty and uncompromising spy thriller. However, after Mickey Rourke and Dennis Rodman joined the film and Paul Mons went to rewrite the script, it turned into something of a cartoon. One can understand why Van Damme did not oppose such strong changes in the script quite well. The actor's career was going downhill. All the movies were failing, and Double Team looked like one of his last chances to stay afloat, if not the latest. Basketball player Dennis Rodman in '96 was at the peak of his popularity, and many Hollywood studios wanted him in their projects. At the time, no one suspected Rodman's media popularity would not give any bonuses to films featuring him. The situation is similar to Mickey Rourke. The actor gave up a lot in the mid-90s and went through several scandals related to his persona. But after Bullet with Tupac, Mickey again remembered. Critics lauded the actor, saying he was finally back. In the end, none of the bonus features worked. Double Team failed miserably at the box office, and the American critics killed it. The film was the last big release for Van Damme, released simultaneously on over 2,000 screens. Even the Universal Soldier, The Return, released a couple of years later, could only dream of such a number of theaters. Universal Soldier itself was the actor's last release to hit American theaters. The next time Van Damme arrived was only 13 years later with The Expendables. The failure of Double Team also buried the action film that Universal Studios developed. Van Damme was tapped to star in the project. In the script, a team of United Nations professionals investigated the disappearance of Red Cross workers in the Himalayas. The employees gathered in the mountains began to disappear as aliens dealt with the Red Cross workers. In Hollywood, the script was called Predator in the Snow and was considered a very promising project. But after another Van Damme flop, Universal Studios was afraid to commit $50 million to the actor, and the project's development was hastily scrapped. It's hard to say. Could Snow Predators save Van Damme's career, or would it simply be another failure of the Belgian? Perhaps if Van Damme had chosen Mortal Kombat in the mid-90s, things could have turned out differently. And because of its success, someone might have turned a blind eye to its behavior. We all could have gotten a completely different second Mortal Kombat, which surprisingly grossed more in the United States theaters than any Van Damme film since Street Fighter. But it turned out the way it did. Van Damme's choice of Street Fighter quickly faded away, and without a big star, Mortal Kombat, while great in theaters, was not a breakthrough for either the studio or any of the actors. In the mid-90s, a star on the cover gave more bonuses than it does nowadays, and Mortal Kombat could have grossed a more impressive amount in theaters. So with the second installment, we could have already gotten a natural blockbuster in terms of budget, but that was not what we ended up getting. What's the bottom line here? Van Damme sunk his career on his own, primarily out of an inflated ego, not out of a stupid choice of roles. Street Fighter's choices were logical enough. 99% of the actors in the Belgians' shoes made the same choice in 1993, because the Street Fighter project looked much more promising than Mortal Kombat. And the money paid a lot more. Street Fighter had more publicity than Mortal Kombat. Plus, if you compare directors, Steven de Souza, who at the time managed to work with Bruce Willis on such projects as Die Hard, Hudson Hawk was advantageously different from the director of Mortal Kombat, who at the time had inarticulate films with a rating near the bottom. Was it worth choosing Mortal Kombat? Probably not. And a little sorry for Van Damme, even if it was his fault.